For years, the world wondered when Prince William would receive what was long promised. But no one expected it to come wrapped in so much emotion. The announcement didn't come with fanfare or flashing headlines. It came in the form of quiet, reverence, steeped in royal tradition and drenched in the unspoken weight of reconciliation. After decades of public speculation and behind-the-scenes tension, Buckingham Palace finally confirmed what insiders had whispered for months. Prince William was officially being granted a title of profound historical and symbolic significance. This wasn't just any appointment. This was a decisive royal shift, one that unfolded not with noise, but with power. And it came at a time when the royal family's fractures were once again thrust into the global spotlight. Because just days before the announcement, Prince Harry had reignited royal tensions in a bombshell BBC interview. With raw candor, he spoke of his estrangement from his father and brother, revealing a family still navigating pain, distance, and disillusionment. And, while the headlines screamed with controversy, William remained silent, publicly composed. Privately, though, something had changed. Behind the walls of the palace, King Charles made a move that stunned insiders and critics alike. He named his eldest son the new Great Master of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, a title once held by Charles himself before ascending the throne. The public reaction was immediate. Was this a show of unity? A political maneuver to steady the royal ship? Or was it something deeper, perhaps? A father's subtle acknowledgement of his heir's burden, and an attempt to heal a legacy of emotional distance with a gesture that carried centuries of meaning? What couldn't be denied was the timing. This royal elevation came not just during the 300th anniversary of the order, but at a moment when the monarchy was quietly teetering between tradition and turbulence. The emotional optics were undeniable. William standing tall beside his father, while his younger brother's voice echoed through the media. For those watching closely, this wasn't just a symbolic handover, it was a silent message. A statement that amid the noise, the crown still knows where its future lies. And beneath the ceremonial robes and royal smiles, there was a deeper story unfolding. Because this moment wasn't born out of convenience, it was born out of years of strain, sacrifice, and choices that had reshaped the royal lineage. A son once caught in the shadows was now being pulled into the center of history, not just by bloodline, but by deliberate intent. But this wasn't just about pomp and ceremony. It was about legacy, loyalty, and a royal bond that had almost fractured, beyond repair. At Westminster Abbey, the silence was heavy, but what unfolded was a royal first that spoke louder than words ever could. The ancient walls, once echoing with centuries of coronations and farewells, now held a different kind of energy. This wasn't merely about titles or protocol, it was something far more intimate. A father who had once struggled to show emotion, and a son who had waited a lifetime for affirmation, came together under the watchful eyes of history and the weight of a fractured family. The occasion was the 300th anniversary of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath. And yet, as prestigious as the event was, all eyes were on just one moment: Prince William's installation as Great Master. King Charles and Prince William did not arrive together. Deliberately separate entrances kept in line with royal tradition, but they also whispered of lingering caution. And still, something felt different. Both men appeared in the grand satin robes of the order, mirroring each other in a way that hadn't been seen in years. These weren't just garments, they were symbols of shared duty, of silent reconciliation, of power being passed not only through blood, but through mutual recognition. And when they finally crossed paths near the Abbey's west door, what followed was more than formality. It was a gesture. Charles, with uncharacteristic tenderness, reached out to his son with a soft pat on the shoulder. A small act. But in a royal world where restraint often rules, it was monumental. The exchange was brief, a whisper of a conversation, just a few words. But for royal watchers and insiders alike, it was enough. After years of tension and months of silence, following Harry's recent accusations, this moment of ease between the king and his heir sent a powerful message. Unity, at least in part, had returned. As the ceremony moved into the Henry VII Lady Chapel, tradition wrapped itself around every step. Officers and knights, nobles and dames, followed the royal pair through the hallowed halls. beneath the hanging banners of the order's highest members, William stepped forward to take his oath. With solemn resolve, he pledged his loyalty not just to the order's legacy, but to the future of the crown itself. As he installed 5 new knights under the gaze of an expectant congregation, cameras captured the gravity of the moment. But what the cameras couldn't show was what this truly meant. This wasn't a ceremonial duty fulfilled, it was a shift, a coronation in spirit, if not in name. And in that sacred space, where kings are crowned and legends are buried, Prince William was no longer just the future, he was the present. The chapel, draped in centuries of power, now bore witness to a son being publicly entrusted with his father's legacy. It was a moment William had earned, not by entitlement, but by endurance. Yet behind the royal smiles and ceremony, tensions still lingered, tensions that were about to be exposed in ways the palace could no longer contain. Just days before the ceremony, Prince Harry dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. In a raw and unfiltered BBC interview, he shattered the carefully polished image of the royal family. Speaking not as a prince, but as a wounded son, he revealed what many had only guessed until now, that beneath the grandeur and silence, there had been pain, disconnection, and emotional exile. Harry laid bare the cracks that had been forming for years, confessing that he had felt emotionally abandoned not just by the institution, but by his father and brother. His words were not vague. They were piercing, and they landed with the force of a dagger, just as Prince William was stepping into one of the most significant milestones of his royal life. The timing was impossible to ignore. With the royal spotlight meant to shine on William and his ceremonial appointment, Harry's revelations quickly hijacked headlines. Critics didn't hesitate to suggest that the interview was calculated, that Harry, knowingly or not, had chosen to speak at the exact moment his brother was poised to take center stage. Whether deliberate or tragically coincidental, the effect was undeniable. The attention shifted. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about the future king's elevation. It was about a fractured brotherhood, exposed once again in front of the entire world. While William stood in Westminster Abbey surrounded by tradition and honor, his brother's voice echoed across the globe, painting a very different picture of the family behind the crown. And yet, Buckingham Palace said nothing. There was no statement, no denial, no pushback, only silence. But insiders whispered that inside the walls, emotions were raw. Staff had reportedly scrambled, not just to contain the fallout, but to protect William from the wave of scrutiny that followed. Because while Harry's words carried the weight of truth for many, they also reignited the wounds that had barely begun to heal. For William, the interview didn't just reopen old battles, it threatened to overshadow a moment he had waited years to earn. A moment not just of public recognition, but of private significance between father and son. And now, once again, the family drama had become a global spectacle. Public opinion fractured almost instantly. One side hailed Harry as brave, finally daring to confront the coldness of monarchy. The other side saw betrayal, accusing him of tarnishing the crown and striking at his brother during a pivotal moment. And in the middle of it all stood William, bound by duty, crushed by emotion, and silenced by royal protocol. He could not respond. He could not defend. He could only carry on, shoulders back, chin raised, while the world debated his family's pain like it was sport. But what the public didn't see was how deeply Harry's words had cut, and how far the palace would go to protect its heir from further damage. While William faced the public, Catherine sent a message, one without words, but with undeniable meaning. In the royal world, silence can speak volumes. And for the Princess of Wales, whose every move is measured, calculated, and watched by millions, silence isn't just strategy, it's power. As the emotional weight of William's ceremony played out in Westminster Abbey, Catherine remained, composed, regal, and unshakably poised. But inside Kensington Palace, a very different kind of message had already been delivered. According to palace insiders, Meghan Markle's name has become a red line, unspoken, unwelcome, and officially off-limits, not just in private conversation, but among royal staff. A quiet decree that revealed far more than any public statement ever could. What began as tension has calcified into a rule. Staff members reportedly know better than to utter Meghan's name in Catherine's presence. Not because of rage, but because of exhaustion. After years of controversy, interviews, accusations, and international headlines, Catherine, who once tried to be the bridge, has drawn a final boundary. She doesn't want reminders. She doesn't want conflict reignited in her home. And above all, she doesn't want Meghan's presence, even in conversation, to disturb the fragile peace she has fought so hard to build around her family. It's not vengeance, it's survival. Because behind the palace gates, the damage left by Meghan and Harry's public break with the monarchy hasn't just affected titles or reputations, it's shaken the core of trust. And Catherine has no intention of letting that chaos back in. Insiders say that while William may still harbor a complicated hope for eventual reconciliation with his brother, Catherine's stance is resolute. Forgiveness may come for Harry in time. But Meghan? That door appears firmly shut. Not out of jealousy, but out of a heartbreak that hasn't healed. The breakdown of the once promising royal quartet, William, Catherine, Harry, and Meghan, wasn't just a tabloid tragedy. It was personal. Catherine believed in that unity. She tried, and when it fell apart, it left scars. Scars that no title or ceremony can erase. And now, in this new chapter of the monarchy, those silent choices are shaping the future just as much as the public pageantry. Catherine's quiet distance doesn't just reflect personal pain. It signals a shift in royal dynamics. She is not just the supportive wife standing beside the future king. She is a central pillar of what the monarchy is becoming. Strong, controlled, and no longer willing to be emotionally entangled in old feuds that cost too much. Her silence, her boundaries, and her refusal to allow Meghan's name into her circle have become more than personal decisions. They are quiet declarations of influence. And as Catherine drew a line in the sand, the ceremony took on a whole new meaning, not just honoring the past, but reclaiming control of the royal future. The title Prince William received isn't just ceremonial, it carries centuries of power, purpose, and prestige. It's a title bound not by trend, but by tradition. And to understand the gravity of what happened inside Westminster Abbey is to understand the ancient legacy now resting on William's shoulders. The Most Honorable Order of the Bath was not born from a casual royal whim. It was established in 1725 by King George I as a mark of supreme honor, reserved for those who had proven themselves not only through service, but through unshakable loyalty to the crown. But its roots stretch back even further deep into the medieval past, when knighthood was earned through a ritual of purification. Soldiers would bathe, pray, and enter a sacred vigil before taking their vows, symbolizing the washing away of sin and the rebirth of duty. It wasn't just a bath, it was a transformation. And the order that emerged from that ritual came to represent the ultimate union of virtue, strength, and sacrifice. For centuries, the Order of the Bath remained a closed circle, honoring only the highest military commanders and elite civil servants whose actions helped shape the British Empire. Every name etched into its history is a name that stood for something larger than itself. And for a long time, that circle was exclusively male. It wasn't until 1971 that the glass ceiling cracked, when Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester, became the first woman granted the rank of Dame Grand Cross. Even that took nearly 250 years. Change in royal circles is slow, but when it arrives, it speaks volumes. Now, Prince William steps into this storied line not as a passive recipient of legacy, but as an active symbol of its next chapter. As Great Master of the Order, he won't just wear the robes. He'll preside over the ceremonies. He'll help appoint new knights. He'll stand as the living face of a tradition that once separated kings from mere commanders. And in doing so, he takes on more than a ceremonial role. He becomes part of a story that stretches across wars, empires, and eras. One that has honored both bloodline and merit. And perhaps most importantly, one that demands more than obedience. It demands vision. This role isn't granted lightly. It is passed on when the crown sees readiness, when it senses not only stability, but the quiet strength of someone prepared to uphold it. That's what makes William's appointment so powerful. This wasn't about optics. It wasn't just a royal family PR moment staged to distract from scandals. It was a calculated gesture, rich with meaning, declaring that the heir is no longer just in waiting. He is now in motion, and he's walking a path paved by centuries of duty and consecrated by the sacrifices of those who came before him. But this legacy isn't just about duty. It's about proving to the world that the next king is ready. For King Charles, this wasn't just another royal duty, it was a father's final public promise. In a family where emotions are rarely spoken, gestures like this carry the full weight of unspoken history. When Charles once stood where William now stands, he too wore the mantle of great master appointed during his years as Prince of Wales, when his own future was still unfolding and his mother's reign cast a long, immovable shadow. Now, decades later, that same title has returned. But it doesn't just come with honor, it comes with memory. It comes with consequence. And as Charles placed it in William's hands, he wasn't just handing down a title. He was handing down a legacy and perhaps, for the first time, letting go of control. The ceremony marked a rare moment of intimacy between a monarch and his heir. For years, their relationship had been defined by restraint, respectful, distant, shaped by duty more than warmth. But something had shifted in the months following the Queen's death. Her passing didn't just leave a vacancy in the monarchy, it left a void in the family. And in that space, father and son found something they hadn't shared in decades: understanding. Sources close to the palace say their conversations became more frequent, more honest. No longer just about schedules or appearances, but about the weight of the crown and the burden of legacy. It was in those quiet moments, away from the public eye, that Charles began to see not just his son, but his successor. By giving William the role of great master, Charles didn't just uphold tradition, he made a statement. A silent, irreversible declaration that he believes in William's ability to carry the monarchy into a new age. One marked not by the stiffness of the past, but by adaptability, compassion, and quiet authority. It was his way of telling the world and William himself that the future isn't just approaching, it's already here. And though Charles still wears the crown, this gift revealed a truth many had quietly suspected. He is beginning to step back, not with abdication, but with intention, slowly, deliberately, allowing William the space to lead while still guiding from the shadows. But this gift was more than ceremonial. It was personal. It was symbolic of something Charles had struggled with for years, expressing faith, offering trust, and acknowledging that his son, once the quiet boy in Diana's shadow, is now the man holding the fate of the monarchy in his hands. This was a father's way of saying, "You're ready," without ever needing to speak the words. And in that gesture, years of distance seemed to close. Not erased, but softened. Not forgotten, but finally understood. Yet even as Charles grants this honor, the question remains, what is William truly inheriting? The cameras caught his smile, but they missed the weight behind his eyes. To the public, Prince William looked every inch the future king calm, collected, unshaken. But behind that carefully controlled exterior lies a man who has carried more than his fair share of private torment. For years, he has lived in a storm that never ends. Family fractures, scandalous headlines, relentless media intrusion, every step he takes is shadowed by the burden of legacy and expectation. And while the world sees the ceremonial robes and royal titles, it rarely sees the toll that silence has taken. William was taught early that emotion had no place in public duty, that appearances mattered more than pain. And so he learned to endure, to suppress, to keep the storm inside. But silence comes at a cost, especially when the betrayal comes from within your own blood. The rift with Harry didn't just divide the brothers, it scarred them both. And though William has never publicly lashed out, the damage is undeniable. It's not just the interviews or the accusations, it's the years of closeness lost, the loyalty broken. William, once part of a bond that seemed unshakable, now carries the guilt of a relationship that fell apart under the eyes of the world. And unlike Harry, he has had no outlet, no televised confessions, no explosive memoir, only duty, only composure, and the quiet ache of watching his brother become a stranger. In many ways, William's salvation has been his own family. His role as a father and husband has become more than a personal joy, it has become a shield. With Catherine, he's found stability. With George, Charlotte, and Louis, he's found purpose. They are his anchor in a life that often feels like performance. And while the public sees smiles and photo ops, they don't see the sleepless nights, the internal wars, the quiet conversations behind closed doors about how to raise his children in a palace haunted by history. William isn't just building a family, he's building a future. One where his children don't inherit the emotional cost he has paid. But make no mistake, behind the scenes, William has not remained still. He has been studying, listening, learning, preparing not just to follow in his father's footsteps, but to step out of his shadow. Because William understands that the monarchy must evolve or fall, that it cannot survive on ceremony alone, and that change, real change, must come from within. So while the world debates royal scandals and shifting allegiances, William is laying the groundwork for a reign defined not by spectacle but by sincerity. And now, with this title in hand, William may finally be ready to lead, not as his father did, but on his own terms. This wasn't just a title. It was the beginning of something much bigger. In the hushed grandeur of Westminster Abbey, with centuries of history watching in silence, a quiet shift took place. For the first time in his life, Prince William was no longer merely next in line. He had stepped beyond the shadow of waiting and into the light of becoming. To the world, it may have looked like tradition, another royal ceremony, another medal pinned, another name added to a list of noble titles. But those who understand the monarchy knew better. This was a signal, a torch being passed not by force, but by faith. And though the crown still rests on his father's head, the people saw something different in William's posture. That day, a man not preparing to rule, but beginning to lead. In a royal family long torn by scandal, grief, and generational divide, this moment offered something rare: unity. King Charles and Prince William stood not as fractured branches of the same tree, but as one line, strong and undivided. Despite the headlines, the whispers, the wounds that still bleed behind palace doors, this public gesture of solidarity reminded the world that the monarchy, for all its flaws, still stands. And more importantly, that its future no longer lies in speculation, but in preparation. William's ascent is no longer theoretical. It has begun not with a coronation, but with quiet command. Inside the palace, plans are already in motion. Advisors speak in hushed tones about strategy, modernization, relevance. But William, they say, isn't interested in spectacle. He is building something deeper, an institution grounded in sincerity. He knows the weight of the throne doesn't come from gold or jewels, but from the people who look to it for steadiness in chaos. His focus is clear: protect the monarchy, preserve his family, and restore trust. Not through grandeur, but through grace. Not through speeches, but through steady, visible strength. This isn't the reign of tradition. It's the reign of transition. He won't rule like his father, and he won't try to recreate the reign of his grandmother. William's leadership is something entirely different. It's modern but measured, powerful but restrained. He leans on his role as a husband, as a father, as a symbol of emotional balance in a royal house that has often seemed anything but. With Catherine beside him, and the eyes of the world shifting from Charles to him, William's path is no longer just paved by legacy, it is shaped by his own choices. And it's those choices that will define the next chapter of the monarchy. Because when history looks back on this moment, it won't just see a title granted, it will see a crown passed in spirit. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.